Welcome to the weekly Worm Farm check-in with the Urban Worm Bag. So today is January 26th, and the last time that we paid any attention to this Urban Worm Bag was January 12th when we did our last video. We put a really large feeding of pumpkin in the bag, crossed our fingers, sealed it up, and I went about my life for almost the next 2 weeks. Now we're in a pretty prolonged cold snap here in the Philly area, and my goal is to just limp my worm bins through the winter in these cold, dry conditions. That's what my goal is normally. But I think it's mostly because I'm doing a lot of these videos and paying a lot more attention to my bins than I normally do during the winter, that things are going better than that. So these worms are not just surviving, but thriving. Now today we're going to check on things, and if everything's still going well, we're going to give it a feeding of coffee grounds because I'm all out of pumpkin. Now, spent coffee grounds are a really misunderstood worm food. They're gritty, but they shouldn't be considered a grit. They're just a rough form of an organic matter, and they will break down unlike mineral-based forms of grit. So people assume that the coffee grounds themselves are acidic too. This is not true. Spent coffee grounds had the acidity washed out of them during the brewing process, so the grounds themselves are pH neutral to slightly acidic. So there's no real concern there, at least that's my opinion. So here's what I think about when I think about coffee grounds. Sterility and dryness. Fresh spent coffee grounds have just gone through a scalding process, which probably has the effect of sterilizing them for a while. So the microbes aren't going to attack them right away. They also have the tendency to dry out a worm farm, which is why the folks who feed coffee grounds are kind of disappointed with the results. The worms just aren't going to swarm coffee grounds the same way they go after pumpkin, which is very high in water and it breaks down very quickly. All right, so if you're new to vermicomposting, I want to send you the Worm Farm Startup Guide, which is a cool little PDF that's going to help you start up a worm bin like this one. This is my budget worm farm, and you would use something like this just to recycle your food scraps and any other organic matter you have around the house. Now, if you get this guide, you also might just find a nice little discount code in there that you can use to get your Urban Worm Bag, worms, or other products a little more cheaply. Just click this little link above my left shoulder. It's going to take you down to the video description where you'll maybe have to click another little link where you can sign up and get that guide immediately. You can also check the top link in the video description to get that guide. All right, so let's open up this bin and see what's going on. All right, here we go. Just got our heat mat there. A couple urban worm blankets, and yeah, pumpkin gone. Very cool to see. I tell you what, before we get into looking at the pumpkin, let's just look at the temps and whatnot here. So yeah, it's 38 degrees here in Plymouth Meeting. That's the outside temperature. Inside temperature inside the barn is 35, which is interesting. This number is going to go up throughout the day. It's going to lag. So we're in the morning time here. So that number is actually going to climb to meet that outside temperature and then maybe exceed it. And of course, in the evening, it's going to be warmer in here than it is outside. So 38 degrees outside, 35 degrees, 57% humidity. And it looks like we're sitting there at about 45 degrees inside the bin. And that's helped by that microbial activity, but then also just that heat mat that we've got in there. So yeah, we're kind of cheating. So plenty of evidence in here. This is kind of funny. Plenty of evidence in here of all the pumpkin. Of course, the worms don't really care about the seeds. Those things really don't break down. They're just too fibrous. But yeah, plenty of seeds, plenty of evidence that we had pumpkin in here. Just like the skin that is just, it's got all the meat eaten off of it. And this is the thing I think is interesting is how you can see the pattern of where we had the pumpkin, and the worms basically didn't touch the paper, which was not touching pumpkin. So any paper waste that was touching pumpkin has gotten broken down. But the worms, of course, aren't interested in the paper when they got pumpkin right there. So it's just kind of, this stuff's been ignored, which is not surprising. So let's just grab a couple handfuls out of here and see what we find. And kaboom. Plenty of just thriving worms in here. I'd say after the last few weeks, I'm just not surprised at any of this. I mean, these worms are happily eating away on organic matter. Understand too that worm castings themselves are organic matter. The worms will actually eat worm castings. Don't think just because you haven't fed it in a while that the worms are starving. They might get a little bit, scrawny here and there, but these worms are doing fine. Really excited about this. Still see it's a little tough to tell. I'll try to, I don't know if you can see this, but that right there is a millipede. We still have millipedes in here. Things like millipedes and kind of critters that are not worms are often great co-composters, we call them. They're good shredders, and they increase the surface area of the organic matter and help the microbes and everything else to attack it much more easily. So yeah, we're doing just fine here. Again, haven't touched this bin for close to 2 weeks. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move this paper waste over to the middle. The stuff that's just not processed. So there's paper waste, there's some Pitt Moss that we didn't get to. We're going to do a feeding of coffee grounds today. Now, not just coffee grounds, we're going to put some more Pitt Moss in here, then some coffee grounds, and probably put a little bit of actual grit on top of it. Like I said in the beginning, coffee grounds themselves are not grit. Actually, as I reach around the edge here, this is really interesting. This is all frozen. And so without that heat mat in here and that warmer core temperature in the vermicompost, this stuff would probably be all frozen, considering the cold snap that we've had. So gonna take some Pitt Moss, not a ton, but a little bit of Pitt Moss. Kind of mound it here in the middle just a little bit. It's funny, you might see some stuff that looks like little gnats flying around. Some commenter on a previous video thought that I had a fungus gnat problem, and the stuff you're seeing is just kind of the dust that comes from that Pitt Moss. So definitely not fungus gnats, not this time of year. I had taken the coffee grounds, which I know I was talking about the water being an issue, and I'm just going to make sure water is not an issue. Now, this is probably a little bit wetter than what I wanted, but we're just going to take the coffee grounds, stick them right on top for now, and then another half quart of coffee grounds here. Stick that on top. I'm going to take a little bit of the Pitt Moss and just layer it on top as well. It'll be interesting to see if the worms attack this or they don't attack this over the next week or so. I'm kind of assuming that they're going to leave it alone for a while just because of that sterility. You know, these things are not being attacked by microbes yet, so we can't expect the worms to attack them. So it's gonna take a little while. Also gonna take some sand here. This is just regular old playground sand. You could do things like mash up eggshells or other things that are a good source of grit, like the calcium carbonate, but this is just an easier thing for me to do. Just gonna layer that on top. We'll try to remember to do that every third or fourth feeding or so, just to make sure that the worms are getting the grit. And that's it, man. We're gonna stick our blankets back on top of here and put our seed starting mat right back in. Gonna keep this bin going through the winter, and that's it. We'll see you next week. Okay, so clearly the worms did a number on the pumpkin like they've been doing for the last couple months. And you saw how they kind of ate the stuff in the middle. So it looked like it was much darker in the middle than it was in the outside where we didn't have any pumpkin at all. So you can definitely see where the worms kind of swarm to. So this week we switched it up and gave the worms a heaping portion of coffee grounds, which might take them a while to attack, but trust me, they're going to get to it soon enough. It won't have the fireworks that we got with the pumpkin, but they're still going to appreciate the feeding. Guys, if you like this video and want me to make more of them, please like it, hit subscribe, and click that little bell to let you know every time we release a new video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all my subscribers. We're going to see you next week.